Ayogyata, incapability. Yada, when. Tat, that. Panchatvam, death. Aham manat, from the misconception of I. Utpatihi, birth. Dravya, the physical body. Darshanam, viewing. Yatha, just as. Akshanoha, of the eyes. Dravya, of objects. Avayava, thoughts. Darshana, of seeing. Ayogyata, incapability. Yada, when. Pada, then. Yeva, indeed. Sakshushaha, of the sense of sight. Dristuhu, of the seer. Drastritva, of the faculty of seeing. Ayogyata, incapability. Anayoha, of both of these. In translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. When the eyes lose their power to see color or form due to morbid affliction of the optic nerve, the sense of sight becomes deadened. The living entity, who is the seer of both the eyes and the sight, loses his power of vision. In the same way, when the physical body, the place where perception of object occurs, is rendered incapable of perceiving, that is known as death. When one begins to view the physical body as one's very self, that is called birth. But when one says, I see, this means that he sees with his eyes or with his spectacles. He sees with the instrument of sight. If the instrument of sight is broken or becomes diseased or incapable of acting, then he, as the seer, also ceases to act. Similarly, in this material body, at the present moment, the living soul is acting. And when the material body, due to its incapability to function, ceases, he also ceases to perform his reactionary activities. When one's instrument of action is broken and cannot function, that is called death. Again, when one gets a new instrument for action, that is called birth. This process of birth and death is going on at every moment by constant bodily change. The final change is called death, and acceptance of a new body is called birth. That is the solution to the question of birth and death. Actually, the living entity has neither birth nor death, but is eternal. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, na hanyate hanyamane sarire. The living entity never dies, even after the death or annihilation of this material body. So this text is talking about two things, birth and death. To understand that, it is also mentioned that the soul is eternal. So Kapila Muni is giving the knowledge, pretty much Sankhya, philosophy, and more than just that, to Mother Devahuti, just for the benefit of all the human beings, not just for Devahuti, because obviously Devahuti is an exalted position. she doesn't need to know much because she was the wife of Karda Muni and mother of Lord Kapila. So it's purposefully for our benefit, like how Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna because Arjuna was being submissive and inquisitive and was an eligible candidate. Therefore, Arjuna was given this Bhagavad Gita, but then it is for all of us, not just for Arjuna. So in this context, how Kapila Muni himself gives the metaphor or an analogy about how your eye, particularly optical nerve, gets affected, then you no longer able to see or see the color or the form. Then it means that this eye particularly has become diseased. So my mother-in-law had a cataract surgery on her eye, and then the first eye, and then again after some time she had her second eye done. Again, my mother also, now after many years, my mother now just recently had the surgery of her cataract as well. She had been complaining to me that she's not able to see because it is very cloudy. She wasn't able to see or read the text, and especially the phone numbers, from the phone when she needs to retrieve any mobile numbers, she's not able to see. So she has to put her eyes very close to the mobile phone. See, one thing we already know from many lectures we have heard that every 7 years, yes, the cells are regrown, reproduced as brand new. But again, we need to understand the old body, like Dehi nomasmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam chara tata dehe antara praptin dhiras tatra namuhyati. So Krishna says that, you change the bodies. Yes, we understand. But on the scientific point of view, also it is accepted. Yes, that body is changing. The soul inside the body is not changing. As an observer, he's seeing the changes and he accepts those changes. He acknowledges those changes. One time what happened, my niece a few years ago, she's very beauty conscious from the beginning though. So I can't complain, so we naturally, men are all beauty conscious. So when she had some allergic reaction from some medicine or something, from injection or vaccination, I can't remember exactly what happened. So she had this allergic reaction. So her whole body was turning black. She is very fair in complexion. Her whole body was turning black. She was really worried because she could see the part of the body except her face. She would be more worried if she had seen her face because that's ultimate thing that you would see in the mirror. So her mother, that is my elder sister, tried to avoid my niece seeing the mirror so that she doesn't get this anxiety or depression or anything like that. And then after some time, she got recovered from it, and then she was fine. So the point is, the body, when she was seeing the body with the disease, she was not able to accept it. The body is changing, right? So the body was changing for whatever reason, but she couldn't accept it because we are all feeling the dearness to our body more than our extended or close to our loved ones, correct? But of course, some people don't care about their body and they are very much focused on their loved ones and extended loved ones. That's fine. But generally speaking, materialistic point of view, we are very much, our body is very dear to us. We are very much attached to our body, right? That is the point. So when this seeing is affected, it's very hard. My mother was describing how she's not able to see, or the sight, sense of sight is diminishing. I was worried and I kept telling her, of course, go, please get the surgery done, don't delay. But she had so many reasons why she is not able to go and do this immediately. But, she said she had festivals coming and things like that. It's bad excuses, of course. But the point is, I can see when you're aging, the things are happening, right? But the other thing that I've also heard from one of the lectures, that the body is changing. Yes, the 7 years thing, you know, every 7 years it's happening, the new cells coming up. But what happens is, there was an analogy given that if you have a house, you're building a house brand new with the modern technology, everything is up to date. And then 7 years after, you're demolishing everything. Okay, you're demolishing the entire house from the scratch. Again, you're building. But now the difference is, you're not going to build as modern as you did the first time, but rather you're going to build it in a way that it's a bit traditional, a bit older model. Okay, this is how you're doing every 7 years. So every 7 years pass, it's not going to be the first time how it was, but it's going to be a little bit less modern and more traditional, or more old school type, I would say. So this is happening, say, for example, 10 times after this, say 70 years, then it's totally, some parts you're not getting it, like modern technology, you're not using it at all. So it's so totally old. So this is what exactly happening to our body. Also, every time the 7-year thing happening, every 7 years, the new cells reproduced, that thing happening, it's not going to be the replica of exactly how at the time of birth we had, or the first 7 years of life we had. So it's going to be rather, you know, in a different perspective, in the sense, it's going to be less usable, I would say, or it's just deteriorating. Okay, so yes, we see the skin is you know, shrinking, and the skin color is fading, and you know, we see all of those symptoms of aging. Yes, we understand, but inside, this is what's happening. And the other thing is, not every part of our body has this cell reproduction or renewal or rejuvenation happening. Most of the body might be happening, you know, most of the body would have that changes happening. But for example, brain cells, no, it doesn't happen. So if we lose the brain cells, it's damaged or it's lost for whatever reason, or aging, then you will not be able to recover it. This is what I've heard. I have not validated this information. I'm not from doctor or, I mean, medical background. Yes, I'm doing psychology, but that's different. So I'm not, you know, into that medical, but I am interested in it. If you, any of you find out more about this particular topic, yeah, let me know as well. Thanks. So now, the first thing, you know, when the baby is, you know, conceived inside, we have seen Kapila Muni was telling about what parts of the body was or developed at the beginning, etc. The science does the same thing as well. Science also tells us what part of the body are developed first, and etc. So just for our context, just for our understanding to related to this verse, seeing is something, you get it, yes, the touch, the scale, you know, feeling, you get it first, but then hearing is the last one you lose, right? Even at the time of death, or closer to the time of death, the hearing is something you would not lose at all, almost until the end of your life. But even if we have subtle hearing, right? Even the person is in coma, we say that yes, we can chant, you know, we can recite verses, read Bhagavatam to that person. We do all those stuff. Why? Because there is subtle hearing. But the thing is, the sense of touch or seeing, smell, especially the smell is the first thing that's gone, that just disappears when one is closer to the deathbed. The sense of smell is the first sense that is lost. And my uncle, when he had COVID a few years ago, it's just 2 years ago, and he was in the hospital, and there was a person next to his bed, died. So he was fearful of death, because that place, that was peak COVID, it was dark period, and everyone was afraid of this COVID and death, and you know, losing loved ones. It was at the epitome of this fearfulness, and he was there. And my aunt, my uncle's wife. She's very strong, brave lady. She, like everyone has shortcomings, and of course, she has some as well, but she was being a good wife, stayed with my uncle. She was so brave that, even my mother or my other aunts, like my mother's sister, that who are sisters to my uncle, didn't go see in the hospital because they were afraid that they will lose their lives by going there. Even myself, I told my mother, please don't go. You don't have good immune, and what if you catch anything? Please don't go. It's up to you, but I would say don't go. This was me as well. So but of course, if Krishna wants to protect someone, no one can no one can kill them, and Krishna wants to kill somebody, no one can protect them. This is a higher understanding, but because we are still connected to this body, still we are victims of this bodily attachment, like Chitraketu, how he was a victim of lamentation of death of his son. We are also in the same position. Chitraketu was Vritrashura in his previous life, and a great devotee, and being a king and having access to all those sastrical knowledge, all those sastra, shakshu, everything. Still, he was so morose because he didn't have a son, right? So many wives, but no one was fertile enough to give him a son. But we don't know, whether he was not fertile or wives. We are not going to go into that argument. But the point is, he considered that he was so unfortunate, and he didn't have a son, and he wanted a son, and yes, he got the son after that. And the Muni said, the son will be the cause of your lamentation, and also the happiness, source of happiness and source of lamentation. It's not just for Chitraketu. It's for everybody else as well. For all of us, the source of happiness and the source of lamentation come from our own family, correct? And jokingly, my Prabhu tells my son, oh, don't get married. I'm telling you already, then don't complain in the future. But Daddy, why don't you tell me? So this is true. Everybody gets this message. Don't get married, you're going to be in trouble. Jokingly we say, but this is true as well. How well you manage the married life is next thing. But generally speaking, it is entanglement. You are actually going and getting caught in the fishnet and then saying, oh, well, I can't get out of here. Of course you can't, because this is samsara. In Tamil, wife, the meaning of samsara means wife. So it's interesting. So there is entanglement there that you can't get out of. So this, this attachment we have is so intense that, we get this fearfulness, this anxiety and panic attack, everything just from nowhere. My uncle was lying in his bed, and the whoever the man next bed died because of COVID. Immediately his fearfulness increased, the intensity or the gravity of his fearfulness increased tremendously, and then he passed away the next day. So this is, you see, again, the fearfulness is the cause of death in his case. And my auntie, who was sitting next to him, staying with him for the entire course of time, she was not affected by anything at all, even by emotion. She was absolutely fine. And she accepted the fact. She understood she's not a reader of Bhagavad Gita like us. But of course, she had so many other reasons why she was not so emotional. But then the point is, she was with my uncle, and she didn't catch the disease. And everyone was afraid, like my mother and her sisters, and they were afraid to go into that place because they would catch the disease. But she was right in there, in the center of that place where the COVID patients are there. But that's, again, as I was saying, we all know this fact. Krishna, when he wants to protect someone, no one can destroy that person. So this text talking about birth and death, why Kapila Muni is taking towards this is because, don't worry, don't become so horrified about the fact of death. It will come. Every one of us has this tag with expiry date. We can't avoid it. when there is a birth, there has to be a death. That's an acceptance. And especially in India, no one wants to talk about death, especially my sister. Like, she has this phobia. When someone talks about someone passing away, she would close her ears and leave the place. She doesn't want to hear it. And she would not go to any place at all, such places. Because she had this trauma from our own life. I mentioned in my previous class also, like, my eldest sister passed away committing suicide when she was 19 or 20 years old. From that conditioning, my other sister still has that panic attack continuing of hearing that news. She can't handle it. She can't handle it at all. She would just leave. Even myself as well. It's a bit tough, but then at least I can overcome because of the confidence we get from Srila Prabhupada's purports and, Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam and etc. But it's very hard with her. My mother always complains, oh, she's like this always. She doesn't even hear or listen or go to the person and ask how they are doing after losing their loved ones, etc. So this is mental depression. So you can even manage the physical agony, but the mental agony is so hard to manage. That's the main reason why I'm studying the psychology, to give devotee care, because so many devotees need some care. I don't know how I will be able to do it. I need to develop strength on my own. That's another subject matter, but that's my interest, because a lot of devotees have stress going on in their life, unable to balance. They read shastras, but they are unable to accept the facts. These kind of facts when it's thrown at us. Like last canto, Kapila Muni was so heavy, telling about how Yamaduta is dragging the living entity to the Yamaloka. Kulashekara Alvar says in Mukuntamala Shastra about Kumbhi Bhaga hell. Kumbhi means part and Bhaga means boiling. So when when someone, and he says that he's not afraid of even if he is put in Kumbhipaga hill. That's what the devotees say, right? So even Chitraketu, same thing. So we see those examples and understand how strong they were. And then in the pastimes of Jagannath, there was a story where the king, I forgot his name. This is the book written by His Holiness Purushottam Swami Maharaj. And the story, the king actually, I can't remember the story, but king was told, yes, I remember the name. So he actually offends his guru, but how he offends it was so unintentional. It was no intention at all. See, in Kali Yuga, that's the benefit of not getting into those reactions or reactionary activities, because in Kali Yuga, if you even think in your mind, you will not get affected, right? But once you become Vaishnava, then that's a different story. Yes, you will get aparat and stuff like that. But generally speaking, you don't get affected, even if you think anything bad in your mind. Only when you do, there is a reaction, not when you think. When you have to act on it. But in this previous ages, Satyuga, Treta Yuga, like that, you have to, even if you think, you will have to suffer, right? Or even if it's a small mistake, you have to suffer. So what happens is when Guru comes, the king stands up and then he offers his obeisances. And then when he falls down on the floor, there was some dust on his forehead. And there was some bee or some fly coming and interrupting. You know how you feel like a little itchiness when there was some dust sitting, or when fly comes and, wander over there. So he felt that thing, uncomfortableness. So immediately he touches this his forehead and rubs off his dirt on his forehead. That dirt or the dust, actually, by offering the obeisances to his guru. So that's a prasadam, like from his guru. So you're not supposed to rub it off. So you just leave it like that. Yeah. But we, even sometimes when we fall down and, offer obeisances on the floor, and when we get off and then we feel like there's some little itchiness, so we rub it off. That was natural. in his case, unfortunately, he was at that age and he had to suffer, and the guru felt offended. He left the place, didn't say anything anywhere to the king, and he left. And king kind of guarded some offense I have made. I don't know what offense I made, and he left the place. And then he found out about it, and then he asked the ministers, all these brahmanas, and asked, like, what should I do? I made a mistake. I offended my guru. See, again, our gurus, you see that how merciful they are. We are doing so many offenses and they are suffering. But those days we see that the gurus, when the disciple offends the guru, the disciple has to suffer. Right? And now, if that is the case in Kali Yuga, then no one will take initiation, or they will be very careful about the suffering. Suffering for their suffering, on oneself, and they will be very cautious about what they do, right? But unfortunately or fortunately, that's not the case here in Kali Yuga, but back then that was the case. Just excuse me. So he asked the ministers, the brahmanas, so what I'm supposed to do? How do I rectify this mistake? After reading so many sastras, the ministers came up with a solution, but they don't want to say it. And then king said, please tell. I'm happy to do anything. They said, no, this is too much. It's very intense. But you have to go through. So I don't want you to do that. And then king said, no, I'm happy to do it. And then what the Prayachita was that the king has to walk on the copper plate that's already on fire. I think it was hot cotton, not cotton, sorry, hot copper rod or something like that, on the roof, on the scorching sun in the middle of the day or something like that. He has to walk on it. And not only walk, I think he has to roll over it or something like that. That was very, very harsh. And he said, oh, that's it. If I do that, I will be, I will overcome this offense. They said, yes. But they said, no, please don't do it. You will die. It's hot and you're going to walk and then roll or something. You will die. Please don't. The king said, no, I'm going to do it. If that's what going to, remove my offense for my Guru Maharaj, I'm happy to do it. And then he does it. And then when he did that, he was doing all of those stuff and everyone thought he's going to die, but then Jagannath protected him. So that's the point. So when even the devotees we see, they are ready to sacrifice their body because they are not attached to the body. Like Ambrish Maharaj, as I was saying in previous class, also Savai Manapumsha Pada Ravinde, I think. Yeah. So when one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, when uses his body, all the senses of hearing and chanting, using his mouth for chanting and seeing, darshana and everything, then this is Krishna consciousness. One will be protected. But when one engages his senses, this panchendriya, these five senses, in only for indriya priti, then yes, there will be a suffering. And I want to tell you a quick story before I finish. There was Subhangi Devi Devasi Mataji. If you see, it's the story articles written in Dandavats. So this Mataji had a father, very materialistic karmi man. He was always an intoxication, a womanizer, and gambling, whatever you name it, he was doing it. One time, and she tried to preach to him, but never worked. She gave up and she went off, to India, and she lived with her family in Vrindavan. And one time she received a call from her mother saying father is sick, and then she had to fly to her place, her hometown, whichever the country was. And the father had a prostate cancer. He was on his bed, and he was so emotional, and he was so much suffering. She could see it and she could feel it. And no one could help this man because he was so getting arrogant. This was about the terminal restlessness. And if you hear from the doctors and nurses who are in this kind of situation, in this bed, I don't know if it is called hospice or something. I don't know exactly what is it called when when someone is in this the deathbed, and then the doctors and nurses have to give them care. And that place is a horrible place, they describe, because all this seeing, the external thing for them, what they see from Yamadudas, no one else see it, right? But because of Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we have got the Sastras, we are reading it, and Kapila Muni, in fact, the last canto talks all about this, and from that we get this hammering going on, and we make sure, we are aware of this, and we also preach to others about this as per time, place, and circumstances, of course. And so this Mataji went and saw him, and he was in this horrible position, and he was so humbled because he understood that the situation was out of control. He can't do anything. He was so controlling his whole family in the past, but now that he is controlled by the law of nature, law of material nature, the karma, his own karmic reactions. So when he was on his deathbed, and she was there, and she brought like Ganga water, Yamuna water, Vrindavan dust, whatever she could bring and help him, putting Jagannath deities and things like that. But still he was seeing things. He was seeing Yamadudas. He was describing, oh no, the fearful dog and the fearful faces coming to kill me. Get them out of here. Get them out of here. He was screaming and crying and see the fire. I see my fire. The body is burning. I am on fire, and I see you all in dust. So he was describing it, the fact, whatever that we read in Bhagavatam, and Mataji can relate to it. Oh my God, my father is seeing what Prabhupada said and what we read. And she was trying to help. She had to fly back in the meantime, back home in India. But then again, mother said, no, you have to come back. Then she flew back. And then now it's last days. And he didn't eat for 8 days. Only was drinking Ganga water or something, whatever she was giving. And she was holding on to her hands and, please don't leave, don't leave. When you're here, I feel comfort. And she was chanting. She thought, and that was her own words, she thought she had the purity of devotion, and she could protect his father. So she can save his father from this death because she is chanting with purity. Whatever the bad, the evil features coming, of course, Yamadudas are not evil. They're doing their job. Whatever that is coming, that will go away. That was her understanding. Then she humbly said that, no, I can see that I'm not even devotee. Whatever I chanted didn't even work. So that's because he had so much karmic activities happening in the past. He has to suffer. But luckily, whatever, of course, swalpa piyashya dharmashya trayate mahato baya. So whatever she was giving, of course, it was all taking into account, but at the high level, it's not working. So he had to die, and of course he died. But at least his death was peaceful at the end. He was suffering so much for so many days, and she was seeing everything. But at the end, she saw that peaceful death. That's important. How one dies, right? So the art of living is taught in Bhagavad Gita. Art of dying is taught in Srimad Bhagavatam. We know that. And when we see that is happening in our own life, that's where your self-realization, that's vijnanam is happening. That's exactly where you start your realization, your real spiritual life, how you handle the situation. It's just 1 second, sorry. Yep, okay. So therefore, from that lesson, we understand whatever level we are at in our devotion, only Krishna knows, correct? We have our own understanding. Oh, now I am at level A or level B, whatever that level is, but only Krishna and our Guru know what level we are at. So we don't have to speculate about which level we are or whatever it is, but our ultimate goal and the process is to engage in the service of the Lord using our senses. And hearing, Prabhupada says this example that Why we keep the alarm clock? Because hearing is the first thing, is always alert and active or activated when you're asleep, or even in coma, as I was saying. So that is always active. So that's why when we keep alarm, it's not about something someone comes and shows you in front of your eyes. Oh, come on, it's 7 o'clock. They show the clock in front of your eyes. You're not seeing it because you're asleep. But when they tell you, come on, wake up, it's 7 o'clock, then you will wake up, because the hearing is always active. So we use the Shravanam for hearing, Krishna Katha, and Kirtanam to preach Krishna Katha to others are very important aspects in our life. We should take it from this context, from this text. So I stop here. Thank you very much. Shri Kandaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So yeah, if you have any questions, please ask.